Okay, we are hoping that everybody else will join us now, but I think some people are running quite late, and I understand. But for the sake of time, we will begin and carry on, and hopefully when people join in later on, and if they have any other questions, we're pretty happy to go back and see if we can answer those questions for you. But to everybody here, good morning. And thank you for joining us today. We appreciate you here being here, and we are pleased to have you here. My name is Edmund Peters. I am one of the sales and operations managers at TESTENIUM. And today on the panel that will be speaking, we're going to have Sudha, who is a QA expert and one of our technical colleagues. And she will be speaking about API, so API testing. She's going to really dive into some of the juicy parts of API. And also, we are talking, and also on the panel, we have Dr. Aras Salingo, who is the CEO of TESTENIUM. He would obviously talk a little bit about API and some of the cool benefits that it comes with, using doing API testing on the TESTENIUM platform. And not only that, he would give us a very small brief of the demo, so we see how API testing works on the platform. So before we go into all of that, it is good for those people who do not know who TESTENIUM is to just get a clear understanding of what is TESTENIUM and who is TESTENIUM. TESTENIUM is a cloud-based meta-computing platform. And many people, whenever I say meta-computing, it just goes over their head like, what does that mean? Well, it kind of means that the platform enables powerful test automation at scale without recording, which can be quite strenuous. Now, many might say, is that so important? I mean, QA guys and testers, they don't mind spending time writing codes all day long. No, they do actually. And it's very, very important. And it's one of the most laborious tasks that many companies and many developers will want to automate. So traditionally, it would take days and multiple testers to generate these codes, and it can be very time consuming, not only talking about very costly. So, and when you add remediation to that, which happens very often, the amount of money that could, build over time is quite exceedingly large. But today we are here to speak about API testing using the TESTENIUM platform. So this is one of the tools that the TESTENIUM platform has. TESTENIUM has many tools on its platform, and API testing is one of them. I will be calling on Sudha to expand a lot more about API testing. She's going to talk about the challenges the industry face and the benefits of using the TESTENIUM platform in tackling those challenges. So without wasting any more time, I would like to call on Sudha to kind of, run us through API testing and why is it beneficial to use TESTENIUM platform in tackling some of the challenges that are being faced today by developers.
Yeah, thanks, Ed, and good afternoon to everyone, and even good evening to people across the globe. So I hope you guys are staying safe in this pandemic. And so my name is Sudha. So I'm a test architect. I've been working, building and maintaining test automation frameworks for both front-end and back-end applications for like 8 years now. So, and I would also like to second every word that Ed just said, because as a QA engineer, when you say like, is it okay to be spending more time in writing automation test code? I would say no, definitely a no, because in my organizations, it's like a big challenge to kind of validate a user story. I mean, manually test a user story and also to automate it simultaneously in the same sprint. So we actually call it a sprint goal, but in reality, it is never, something which we were able to do, because by the time we manually test it and start automating, the sprint is already gone because we spend a lot of time automating a user story. So I'd say like as automation test engineers or QA engineers, we look for every chance that would help us save time and to write code and to kind of complete a user story, the automation part of the user story, the test scenario within the same sprint. And that is when I really got a chance to use TESTENIUM, and when I actually was a happy user, I thought like I should get into the sessions that TESTENIUM has been hosting. So yeah, that was my experience that got me into TESTENIUM as a very satisfied user. So in today's session, I thought like I'll share my experience and knowledge of what an API is, what's API, and about API testing. So yeah, we'll just go and see how the APIs are being tested in the current world. So just to get started, what is an API? As we all know, it's an application programming interface, which is a logic that is written in any programming language, say Java or C# or PHP, like any programming language. And this logic acts as a mediator between two software applications to communicate between each other. It helps two applications to kind of talk to each other, and the API is being a mediator or a centerpiece of logic. So let's think of scenarios where we kind of register ourselves to an application, or we book an Uber cab, we kind of purchase stuff online, or we book flight tickets. So in all these day-to-day scenarios, we actually have a number of APIs used in the backend. So behind the scenes, for all these scenarios, it's nothing but APIs being called. So it is nothing but a piece of code or a set of code written by someone in a company, and anybody can use it. Any third-party company can use it. I mean, referring it to be an open source API. For example, I'm trying to build a software application where I have this requirement of user authentication. So instead of hiring resources, or instead of me as a developer writing a piece of code for this, I can simply go and use a Google's API or a Facebook's API for user authentication. So you might have seen this happening in many applications where you try to get yourself registered. And when you log into their application, a pop-up appears. It's nothing but a list of possible authentications, like possible ways of having yourself authenticated. For example, you might see a Google login, you might see a Facebook login. These are like commonly found logins. And you can authenticate yourself using these logins. For example, if you click on a Google login, it will ask for your Google ID and password. And when you give, and when you're successfully authenticated, it will actually take you to the third party's dashboard. So simply, these third party companies are using Google's API and Facebook's API to authenticate their users. So instead of writing a code to authenticate, they simply use and procure these APIs. So that is the significance of having APIs in the world. So one more best example that I was able to think on top of my head is simply booking a flight ticket. So for example, if you're looking to book a flight ticket with British Airlines, not all of us nowadays, like we have this habit of going to BA website. We simply go and use these third-party applications or sites like Make My Trip or Cleartrip or Expedia to book our tickets. So why do we actually do that? It's simply because we just not only get to see British airline tickets, but we have a comparison of all the tickets, like a comparison of the cost, the comparison of route. So we try to explore more with these third-party applications. But these online travel agencies, or what we call OTAs, they simply use APIs provided by different airlines. For example, Make My Trip would make number of calls to British Airlines API, to APIs by Indian Airlines, to API by Gulf. So it just connects with these APIs, and it simply procures their data, and they process this data, and then they put this data in their own user interface. And this is what we see in the front end. So while I was talking about APIs, I thought like it would be really nice if we understand what is a three-layer architecture of a software application. So talking about a three-layer architecture, so I would say the first layer, or the topmost layer. I'm hearing some interference. Can you all please be on mute? Yeah, thank you. So yeah, coming back to a three-layer architecture of a software application, I was saying like the first layer, or the topmost layer, is a presentation layer. It's nothing but, for example, in a Make My Trip website, it's the front end, it's the user interface, what we see, where when we give the route, the from route, the to route, the price range, etc. So it's basically the front end, which is the presentation layer. And then comes the main layer, the second layer, which is the middle layer, and that's the business logic. So this is where APIs comes into picture. For example, Make My Trip making a call to BA's API or to any other airline's API. So this centerpiece of core logic is the business layer, and this is the API layer. And the last layer, but the deepest layer, is the data layer or the database. For example, when you try to get yourself registered to make my trip, your user details goes into the DB. So this database validation goes on the database layer or the server layer. So while I was explaining these three layers, you might have known like how important is a business layer and a DB layer. So it's very important because these layers are not seen by the users. The user doesn't have an option to see what's inside these layers, the business logic that's happening here. But as a test engineer, validating these two layers is like more challenging than testing the front end. So this is actually backend testing or black box testing where this comes to picture. So testing an API, I would say, like, is something really important a test engineer should do at a very early stage of the product's life cycle. Because like intense testing done here, which is the core of that application, helps us really have confidence in the logic. And it also helps us to make sure that the requirement is actually working as expected, even before the application is going to have a front end. So any bug that we find here at an API testing level will help us to fix the bug early and have a better and robust application, because it is very difficult and really time consuming to actually identify a backend bug or a bug in the API when we actually go and see it from the front end. So it's nearly impossible to do that because it takes a lot of time backtracking where it comes from. So yeah, so having talked so much about APIs and API testing, now we have this question of how do we even test it? Or how do testers test the APIs in the current world? So as a matter of fact, we can see that not every test engineer has got API testing skill set or knowledge about APIs. So to actually train a test engineer for backend testing, it's really time consuming and it's actually costly and expensive in the current world. So because we actually use tools for API testing, naming few of the market tools like Swagger or Postman or Soap UI to test APIs. So you can pick any of these tools, name any of this tool. You'll have to do so much of test planning and you'll have to work so much in setting up the data into these tools, which is really a lot time consuming, more than the actual testing itself. For example, in any of these third-party tools for API testing, you will have to create a test with all your request header fields. Like you'll have to give your URL, you'll have to give your authentication type, your content type, your API key, your secret. You have to really generate your token every time you want to run an API scenario, and then give your request payload, and then you'll have to send a request. And finally, you will see a response status and a body. All this is a manual validation. It really takes a lot of time to generate tokens each and every time. It's like, I mean, this is really a challenge to a test engineer, creating tokens every time. I am many times fed up with this part in all these third-party tools. So even after all this manual validation, what I'll have to do is like, I'll have to go and I'll have to maintain a collection for each of these API projects with all the API endpoints and all the methods for each endpoints in my API testing tool. To make it more reusable, I'll have to set the environment variable, which is nothing but, as you know, a set of constants like your URL, your API key, secret, your user ID and password, all these credentials which are never going to change. These constants have to be set as environment variables in these third-party tools. And then it enables us to reuse in the future test cycles. So you can see how much of work goes in testing a single API scenario. You'll have to generate tokens manually each time, and you'll have to give this token to test the API scenario. This is definitely not simple, I think. So this is when I really felt like as a test engineer, TESTENIUM was really helping me big time. So in TESTENIUM, for the same API testing, TESTENIUM has got such a nice user interface that will help anyone to input your URL, your payload. Again, the payload can be the entire JSON payload, or you can also have them added like in a one-to-one fashion, like field to value in the TESTENIUM's UI. And then you give your user ID, password, or any such credentials, maybe API key and secret, etc. And you also have this lovely UI which enables us to give the URL from where the token is to be fetched from. Because in any third-party tool, you'll have to generate the token and give the token for testing. But in Testenium, you have a URL field where it gets the URL and it actually fetches the token during the execution. So in fraction of seconds, it computes the data. The token is fetched from the authentication service and it's applied for authentication, and it gives you results, the response status and body, in like really milliseconds, I would say. So like the biggest advantages of this platform as a QA engineer I have seen, firstly, is the time. I'd say like the speed in which I get my results is like on par with any other tool that I have used. It's like really literally milliseconds that I get my results. And also like really happy with the user-friendly UI where I can put my test data for API testing. Because as I explained, in many other tools, I have had to spend like so much of time preparing the test data and putting up my test data in their UI. So Testenium has in that way made life really useful by having a very user-friendly interface. It also eliminates this big requirement of the user. I mean, not asking the user for a token every time. It just eliminates that requirement of asking a token from the user. As I said, it generates tokens from talking to the authentication service, which is really a lot of time saved at a QA site. I would also say that it's really nice to have a customizable UI for testing our APIs. Testenium has this flexible and customizable UI when we come to API testing. And not the least, I was able to see that when you use Testenium for testing your front-end services, like using the Selenium WebDriver feature, by using this feature, you get to test your front end, but you can use the same platform for your API testing as well. But then I know in real time we can't do that, because when you use Selenium WebDriver for front-end testing, you'll have to procure a different third-party tool for your API testing or for your backend testing. But with Testenium, I think when we do front-end testing with their Selenium WebDriver feature, they also have this API testing feature which enables us to do backend testing at the same time. So this is like one monolithic platform for quality assurance that does all possible types of testing that as a QA engineer can ever imagine of. So just coming to the automation part of APIs. I know this is a very big challenge for automation test engineers to actually build and maintain a API test framework. Not only you get your test results for API scenarios from Testenium, but what Testenium does is it also gives you test scripts generated in a nice Gherkin format, in a Gherkin syntax. So as an automation test engineer, we can use these test scripts in our framework to create and maintain an API test framework within our organization. So this to me is like having both manual and automation of my API scenarios done using one platform called Testenium, which actually gives me an answer for completing the work within my sprint. It's like sprint goal actually being achievable with Testenium. So I'd say like we can just eliminate this huge backlog we have with automation. So because it's like very easy to manually test and actually have the test scripts running behind that can be used for automation. So you can simply pick those test scripts and use them for automation, and you can achieve your sprint goal of actually manually testing a user story and also automating it within the same sprint. So with Testenium, you can test all your APIs, all the methods like the get, post, put, patch, delete, using their nice, simple user interface. And you just get your test results within milliseconds, as I said, and also your test scripts in given, when, then format. So I was just really a happy experience with using Testenium for my API testing. And I would say like this is really like a very good friend for every test engineer, because it has like a very nice customizable UI, and it doesn't have it doesn't ask the user to generate token. It does it automatically. The speed and like everything, I would say like one platform which helps us to test everything, like from the front end to the back end APIs. And I'd say like that is like a delight to a test engineer, which saves time and a lot of coding effort that goes in.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'm like a very happy user. I'm really looking forward to use it in my organization.
Thank
And
you.
yeah, we'll just have any questions after Dr. Aras's demo now. I'm looking forward to look into Doctor's demo as well. So yeah, thank you, Ed and Dr. Aras and the team for giving me this opportunity to connect with the team and to
Thank
share
you.
my experience. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, Sudha. Thank you so much. We appreciate that. Thank you very, very much. That was a real breakdown of your experience and the benefits, because you see, these challenges that companies face are business critical challenges. Okay, these challenges are challenges that can affect business continuity. It can affect downtime and also productivity. So it's always good to see that there is something out there that plays an advocate role to make to increase productivity, to make developers literally, without sugarcoating the word, but make their life much easier, because it's hard enough them having to sit there consistently writing these codes, generating them, going through remediation because there's an error, and that can take time. So if anything would make their life easy so they can focus on more of part of the business that require more intake and upstream of productivity, I think any organization will welcome that. And most importantly, anything that would save any company money is a win-win for everybody. And as Sudha has obviously rightly explained, TESTENIUM not only can save you money, but it can reduce the time spent on writing these codes, making life exceedingly easy for the developers and their managers. Now, without further ado, I would like to introduce Dr. Arasalingo, because what Doc will do now is give us a broader view of the platform by giving us a glimpse of the demo, so we can see how it works on scale and see how it works initially from his from what he's going to showcase to us. So Doc, I'll pass on the panel to you and you take it from there.
Thank you, Ed, and thank you, Sudha. Yeah, okay. I think I have nothing much to say about API testing, because of Sudha has covered very comprehensive set of features and explained very well. So I would rather focus on the demo. It's a small demo. And what would I say in terms of test automation in the industry? So there are a lot of misleading concepts, like automation should be 100% automation. But what they are doing, like partial automation, and they are claiming as automation, that is not correct. So for example, in API testing, so they have to deal with token, which is the authentication token. Without authentication, you won't be able to reach the target server. So in order to do that, what they do, they use some tools where they have to manually request the API token, which is the authentication token, and then they have to copy and paste for the test code, test screen. So this is a manual process, which is not exactly an automation. So what they are claiming is an automation. So in order to handle the manual work, what we do in TESTENIUM is to automate the process of getting the token and fetching the token in the test code. So by doing that way, we are not going to make any mistake at all. So if you are copying and pasting, if you miss one character, then the authentication will not be performed, properly. So then again you have to copy and paste a second time, and so on. So for some reason, if you are interrupted by another employee in the company while you are doing or performing the API testing, you won't be able to wait until the time elapsed. So there's a certain time duration. Within that particular time duration, you have to copy the token and then do the testing. So that is impossible if someone is interrupting you. So these are the problems in the industry. It is a huge problem when it comes to API test automation. So in order to eliminate those kind of problems, so we have implemented the system to automatically get the token, authentication token, and fetch it automatically during the execution in the background, so that the user even doesn't have to see the token at all. So it will be fully secure and complete the test automation properly. So now I'll be able to share my screen and show you the simple demo. I believe you are able to see my screen. Yes. So here I am on the API test automation screen. It's a very simple screen, encapsulate everything together. So you can see on the left hand side, you have to put all these parameters on the left, including the API endpoint, resource base path, and also you can input body input parameters if you want to type them. So on the other hand, on the right hand side, you can see a text area here. We can copy the JSON format of the request body, so that the payload, so that you don't have to write them one by one on the left hand side, and then you provide your user ID, password, and the authentication URL with the base path, so that it will be able to generate the code. But we are providing the code in order for the user to modify the code and execute the API. I will show you a sample code. So this is a sample code generated by the system. So we can modify anything that you want to modify, but that is not necessary if you don't want to. Suppose you want to see the results, then when the API is executed, it will get the response with the response code and the result. The result is again based on JSON format. So you can see here the status code is 200 and the response in the bottom in JSON format, so that you can click and see the response as well. So that is very easy. So it doesn't take much time to execute, and it's getting the results very quickly as possible. So by doing this way, so we are avoiding a lot of problems. So we don't have to deal with the token manually. So that is a manual process of doing it as part of the automation. So that is why I said that is not a 100% test automation. It's a partial test automation. So that is what I want to say in this particular session. Ed, you can conclude it. You're on mute, Ed.
Yeah, sorry. Thank you, Doc, for showing us that demo. That gives us an overview to kind of put together in place and amalgamate what Sudha has spoken about in regards to API testing. You know, one of the unique things about our platform is the amount of, you know, generous tools that TESTENIUM has on its portfolio that has been able to do, you know, exceedingly good work for many challenges that a lot of industries, not just companies, and I'm talking from small to medium size all the way to enterprise businesses. We have tools in there, whether it's to do with encrypting your data and keeping them very safe, or whether it's due to automating testing or managing you know, your billing system, payment billing system, your payroll system. There are different tools in different parts of TESTENIUM that hasn't been showcased in the industry as we would want it to. So I will take this opportunity to ask everybody involved, if you haven't had the chance to go on the website and look at some of the great things that we have and some of the tools that we have, to please do so. Although this open discussion is focused on API testing, TESTENIUM has many other tools of testing, whether it's Selenium testing or load balancing or performance testing or TDD testing. That's one of the beautiful things about this platform, and it's constantly evolving, becoming innovative, constantly being creative in making sure the actual goal of TESTENIUM from when I joined this company and I asked Doc, why? What is the essence of this company? Why meta computing? Why are you trying to compute the compute? And his answer was, I want to make life easy for developers, because that doctor himself is a developer. So he wants to make life easy for developers. So he's constantly bringing out different frameworks and criteria to make life easy for developers, but with a target to make it costly even for the company. So what I mean by costly even is to bring down the price of the cost of automating, developing, code generating, and encrypting document for many enterprise companies. Hence why, you know, I have been involved with Doc this long, and hopefully will stay with him for the foreseeable future, because I can see, you know, exceedingly from a very good view, all the great things and all the wonderful tools that the portfolio of TESTENIUM has, and that can make life quite easy and tackle many of the challenges we face today. Now, we like people to get involved because this is an open discussion. So we like people to get involved and ask questions and, you know, speak about their experiences, or try and find out what it is that they would like to do different, or ask any questions about TESTENIUM in regards to what they would like to know, what TESTENIUM can contribute to their life or to their organization. So I will open the floor for 5 minutes for anyone, whether it's Yako or Harisha or Keda or Hiloni, anybody that has any questions they would like to ask Sudha and Dr. Aris so they can answer. So we literally have just a few minutes for those questions to happen before we wrap it up.
And I think we got only 2 minutes in the...
If anyone have any questions, please say. Yako?
Or you can email us.
We can't hear you again, Yako.
Check it out again. Now you can hear me, I suppose.
Yes.
Yes, I would just I'll go and look at the website again. I was specifically thinking at database testing, when we make database changes, adding some more columns, and then when data flows through from a client side through an API, but the client API, where they populate the database, and we want to maybe, run some tests, automated tests on the data that comes into the database.
Yeah.
I'm sure this would TESTENIUM would handle that quite well.
Yeah, definitely. There are 2 ways of doing that.
You're on mute, Doc.
Yeah. Yes, Jaco, there are 2 ways of doing it. We have one database testing one specific topic, as well as through API also we can do that. Yes.
You see, Yako, thank you for the question you've asked. We are quite robust in regards to capability and the scalability of our testing prowess. So the solutions we provide, although because of the current situation with COVID, we are very lenient. We're leaning towards bringing a solution for small to medium-sized companies. As you know, Yako, they will be the ones to suffer the most currently because they don't have the financial acumen to be able to tackle and to be able to handle the kind of mess that COVID-19 has brought to all our industries. Not that I'm saying that everybody else is not suffering, but small to medium-sized businesses will suffer more. Our company is built to be able to take on enterprise level. But we are also leaning towards making sure that the platform can help small to medium-sized businesses. So on that note, because we have a short few minutes left before
just 1 minute left
before we end the discussion, I want to take the opportunity to thank Harisha Hilmi and Keda and NM and Sudha and Doctor and Yako and Vara and Hiloni for joining. This is something we do every Thursday, so we're going to be talking about another tool next Thursday. Hopefully we'll have another colleague of ours, Leo, on here. So if any of you would like to join again, 11 a.m. next Thursday, that would be great. But from me and TESTENIUM, I want to say thank you very much to everyone.
Thank you.
And have a great weekend coming.
Thank you all. Thank you.